Back in 2010, Fox had a game show called $1 Million Money Drop. Now this show is basically like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, only like 10 times more stressful. We're talking Hunger Games level of stress. But just 2 episodes in, there was so much controversy that it caused lawsuits, and the show eventually died because of it. So in case you've never seen the show, let's break it down. The show starts off with $1 million that you could possibly win, but not only possibly win, they give it to you. Right out the gate, you become a millionaire. Unlike the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where you start off with $0 and you have to build your way up to $1 million, there's obviously a catch because it's a game. You have 7 questions that you have to answer. Now you get to pick the category for each question. They give you 2 options, you pick which one you want, and then they'll ask you a question in that category. The team is also based up of 2 players, typically husband and wife, but sometimes just 2 friends. The host of the show is comedian Kevin Pollak from the movie A Few Good Men. The first 3 questions, you have 60 seconds to answer the question, and the question has 4 possible answers. You have to put all your money on every answer you think could be the correct answer, or you could put it all in on one answer. But you have to leave at least one answer completely empty. And then when you get to question number 4, you get an additional 15 seconds with a total of 75 seconds, and you only have 3 possible answers to choose from, but you still have to keep at least 1 drop empty. Then as you get near the end, you get an additional 15 seconds, leaving you with 90 seconds to come up with an answer, and you only have 2 possible answers. And then the only caveat though is the very last question, there is no time limit because it's your final question. You could take all the time in the world. And they have one little ace up their sleeve. When the timer runs out, they may give you an additional piece of information about history or something in relation to that question, and you can choose to take an additional 30 seconds to move your money to a different answer. And one thing that makes this way more stressful than a show like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, once you've answered enough questions correctly, you have your money secured, so you're guaranteed to go home with a certain amount of money once you pass that checkpoint. This show has no safety net. Every single question, your entire bankroll is on the line. Our first controversy begins in the very first episode that ever aired, the Post-it controversy. From the very first episode of the show, here is our 2 contestants.
Please welcome Brittany Métis and Gabe Ukoye.
This couple had the right idea. They gambled big on every single question, putting most if not all of their money on the answer they believed was the correct answer. And if you play the math on these 7 questions, you have to play that way on at least a couple of the answers if you want to make it out of this game alive with some sort of money. If you want a lot of money, you have to bet all your money on all the chips every time. Go big or go home. Well, that's what this couple did. The first 2 questions went off without a hitch. They only lost $200,000, which sounds like a lot, but starting with $1 million. So what was the question? The question was, which was sold in stores first? And then the answers, they had 3 to choose from. Post-it notes, the Walkman, or the Macintosh computer. So at this point, they got to question 5 and they still had $880,000 left to play with.
It was a weird concoction. They were trying to create something else. And they accidentally made a sticky stuff that sticks every time.
It feels like you know a little bit of history about the Post-it.
Now, Gabe was 100% confident in Post-it notes being the correct answer. His partner, however, was leaning more towards the Sony Walkman.
Walkman, 25 seconds. The Walkman, baby. Why would it be the Walkman? The Walkman is that's digital technology. They didn't have
And he brought up the good point that back then we had the giant boom boxes we walked around with, so obviously the Walkman wasn't that old of technology. However, the Post-it notes, he knew the history, he knew how it was an error from the company, and so he put $800,000 on Post-it notes and he put $80,000 on the Walkman just in case. But he wanted to put it all on Post-it notes, and his girlfriend at the time wanted to put something on Walkman. And this is just to ensure that just in case they're wrong, they still get to play and try to make it to the very finish. Then, surprising to everybody, the Post-its dropped. They lost all $800,000, leaving them with nothing left but 80 grand, which is still a lot for most of us, but it's nothing compared to $800,000. However, this left them in the game, and all they had left was question 6 and question 7. Make it through those, and they would survive. And I'm not going to tell you whether or not they walked away with the 80 grand because I don't want to ruin the show for you, and I think you should go watch it. That being said, that night Gabe went back to the hotel and did some serious research of his own on Post-it notes, looked up the manufacturer and their history.
I saw that the answer was actually 1977, which was earlier than the Walkman, which they had stated.
Post-it notes first sold in 1980. Macintosh computer sold in 1984. Sony Walkman in 1979.
Now here's the twist. That wrong answer actually turned out to be the right answer.
And he admitted later on in multiple news interviews saying that it devastated him and made him feel sick after that happened. And it's probably the reason why the last 2 questions went the way they went with the $80,000 that they had left to risk. So what did Fox do about this? Well, after the show aired and after the controversy came out in all the news media and everything, Fox did come back and admit that they made a mistake with their research and that they had not as reliable of a source that they used.
Let me read the statement that Fox has released in regards to this. Unfortunately, the information our research department originally obtained was incomplete. We feel it is only fair to give our contestants, Gabe and Brittany, another shot to play $1 million money drop.
However, Gabe and Brittany never returned, which makes sense with the stress that they probably went through going on the game show, the emotional roller coaster, constant stress, and then the ultimate defeat after already feeling like you had that money in the bag. And this is a direct quote from Gabe himself. He says, "It haunts me. I haven't slept for days. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it." Quote, Gabe Okoye. So obviously he's very much not okay.
Please welcome the new owners of this giant green pyramid of cash, Patricia and Andrew Murray.
Now, they were very aggressive with their decision making as well, not quite as aggressive as our previous contestants. However, they made it to question 6 with $580,000 left in the pot to risk taking home. And on question 6, they were down to only 3 answers to choose from. And the question in question is this. According to data security from Imperva, what is the most common computer password? They had 3 answers on the board. One was password, another one was 123-456, and the last one was I love you. And if you hit that like button, I love you too. Now, to be on the show, part of the contract was they agreed that they're not going to have any type of trick questions, everything's straightforward, and they are not going to try to mislead you in any way, not like one of those type of IQ tests or something. And on a side note, I was researching this for the video, and there were several studies that I found that said that the correct answer that they guessed wrong was the same answer that they came to the conclusion of in their own studies. They put everything on the answer password. Only to find out the correct answer was actually indeed 123-456. Why did they sue? From their perspective, they said the show promised that there wasn't going to be any trickery about, and that the question was actually misleading. They also believed that their contract wasn't fair. Now, looking back at the Post-it note situation, it's interesting that the first episode was filmed several weeks before it actually aired. So Fox had time to correct the Post-it note debacle before it became a public issue. However, they seemed to only do damage control after it aired and after the news media started picking up the controversy. Granted, they did invite the guests back though, so that is making good faith with the company. However, were they doing that because they felt bad that they misled them and they lost the chance of winning $800,000? Or did they only apologize because the news outlets started picking up the story? So looking at the show, it seems like they cut corners when it came to researching the questions that they did. But then also I noticed when I was watching the show, it seems like they cut corners with the set as well. The stage that they're standing on is a glass stage, and it's probably plexiglass. But if you look closely, like when contestants are jumping up and down, you can actually see the stage is flexing. If you look at stuff like skyscrapers where they have glass floors, or the view at the Grand Canyon where you have this glass bridge you can walk on, you never see the floor flexing. It's solid. That leads me to believe that they probably got a cheaper material that was thinner for the stage floor, and also by the second episode it was already scuffed up really bad. So maybe this is a sign that the company was cutting corners in multiple areas of the show. The biggest thing that Andrew and Patricia were upset about, though, is that the research was done on a specific situation with one company and their passwords that they were using, not a national password situation. They claimed that if they had that bit of information, that would have changed the decision that they made on dumping all of their money into one answer. Surprisingly, they had 12 episodes of the show, but they never got a second season, and nobody ever won the $1 million. Some people got a good chunk of money, but not even half. So then why didn't the show air a second season if they never even had to pay out $1 million? It seems like it's a cheap show to run. Maybe it's because of all the controversy. So you ready to find out what happened with the lawsuit? Well, I'm going to tell you right after this commercial break. Okay, but seriously, he was really good at doing that in the show.
First, yes.
Come on. You'll have to come back after this to find out on the $1 million money drop.
It's like a Band-Aid. Let's just rip it off.
I wish I could, but we've got to go away for a minute. Come back on $1 million money drop right after this.
The ultimate outcome of the lawsuit is actually unknown because it was more than likely settled, and they probably settled for that very reason, so we don't get to know the final outcome. But after the Post-it controversy, there was a lot of distrust in the audience to the show. The reality is the ratings for the show dropped harder than the money did. If it were me, I think the Post-it note couple probably has more of a reason to sue than the password couple, but that's just my opinion. So then I got two questions for you. If you were Andrew and Patricia, would you have sued? And also, is your password 123456? Because if it is, you should probably change it. Until next time.